what they think is happening, or and now we see the gifs and the memes that are like, I think one that tickles me all the time is like somebody like out laughing on a yacht or something. They're like, how you post when you just finished crying all night about that breakup last night, right? So there are a lot of times that people portray on social media what they want their lives to look. So everyone has to be mindful that, you know, no one is generally, married couples are posting the happy pictures. I tell people all the time, I love posting. Hey, my husband look good in pics. I'd never post when I want to push him down the stairs. Duh. I mean, so, it's always, I always say you don't come and post. And lots of people, I'm like, get a journal. Some things aren't for our social media because there's some people who overshare on social media. Or then sometimes it can absolutely be a cry for help, right? So if I see someone that makes a post that, says something or alludes to the idea of self-harm or, some that I'm going to reach out right away. I'm like, hey, are you okay? Here's 988. That is the crisis line for, crisis individuals 24/7 trained to respond right away to someone who is having suicidal ideations or in a severe crisis. I may, just kind of reach out and check in. If I see those posts start looking a little bit different, I'm like, hey, you okay? Because some people, they bleed all on your timeline. So it's a very interesting thing to sit and watch and to unpack. So I think that social media has absolutely, it can lead to a negative decline in mental health. And there's a really good Netflix documentary that I saw maybe it was during COVID, but where some people who escaped Facebook kind of talks about the algorithms and how they actually train those algorithms to make it addictive. And, and we all know now, I think I can mention something and I can have a phone conversation. The next thing I know, it's all my ads on Facebook or in social media sites. So even when you disable ad tracking and all the things, someone is listening in order to manipulate a market. So it's important to realize that that is how they were able to sway, parties used to sway elections and all things. So I think that, oh, absolutely, the dopamine hits that social media gives, it's better than any psychotropic med on the market. So you have to absolutely, if you have children and teenagers, monitor what they're watching, have a check-in about what they're thinking about, especially now with AI becoming people's friends and, uh, therapists in some cases. It's really important to check in with those, the most vulnerable, as it pertains to social media.
If I can
That is
add to
a,
that,
oh, please go ahead. Yeah.
I just recently did a presentation where it talked about mental health in Black men. And one of the researches that I did for that presentation was social media. And something that came up during my research, it was that it showed that young Black men are 6 times more likely to suffer from anxiety and depression based on the materials that they get online. So and it's kind of like what she was talking about, like the algorithm and all that stuff. So as soon as you see like one negative thing, you see another negative thing. So there's research that show that we're young Black men are more likely, 6 times more likely than their counterparts, like white counterparts, to deal with to have like depression and anxiety associated with social media, especially like during the pandemic when all we kept seeing was police brutality, police, a lot of young men dying at the hands of law enforcement, even though it may have been a small portion of our population, but the media, social media pumped it out so much that if you're a young Black male and you're looking at someone that you can identify with and say, man, this guy looks just like me. And if it happens to him and he didn't do anything, this can happen to me. From my research, it shows that it increases the anxiety and it also increases the depression level among young Black men, social media.
Yeah, that is all really good input. And, I think just as a parent, I find um, I'm scared of what social media can do. My kids are very young, so we're not at a point where they have social media accounts, but it definitely affects how I think about it in the future as they get older and more of their friends have these things of what they would be exposed to. Because I see what you're talking about there with that sort of the skewed perspective that you get of what's right and what's wrong in the world and how that could affect how you feel about things, particularly as someone that comes from a marginalized community. Dr. Weaver, you made a great segue actually for another question that came up, which is how do you leverage artificial intelligence in your work? Have any of you found have any of you found space for AI in your work, or I guess maybe are you finding that AI is I guess kind of to what you alluded to, Dr. Weaver, sort of trying to take the place of like an educated and experienced therapist. I'm just curious, what have you been hearing from clients, and what are you seeing being brought to the table in that regard?
Well, for me, as far as AI, I use AI regularly as a tool. So in my private practice, AI summarizes my notes. Now, and just like AI does for everything else, it sometimes hallucinates or it gives something totally different. So you have to go in again, just say, "Oh yeah, AI got it," But it absolutely it has increased my efficiency, and it makes any clinician. I mean, Miss Chandler can probably tell you, listen, notes.
I'm like this. Like I use AI.
Great.
It makes our job
It makes it so much, it
20
makes
times
it so
easier.
much, so 20
The
times easier.
amount of
I hate doing notes.
yeah, me too.
So I think it's the notes. And then as a professor of social work, I teach master's level social work students, doctoral social work students, and doctoral students in higher education leadership. And I've had to use AI and of course to detect, what's happening with their papers. And sometimes I have to, I mean, I use AI to help um, enhance assignments, so there may be something that I'm thinking, I was like, I think I needed something a little bit different. So I may drop in my idea and say, yeah, but make this more appropriate for, this level of doctoral student or master's level student. So, I mean, I use it to help enhance, and I also educate my students on how to use it as a tool, and that AI should not be thinking for you, but you can use it to help correct grammar or even to create an outline. You can use it to help you create a shell of something, but it should not be formulating papers, because there have been times where I check references. So I may want to read an article and I was like, this article's nowhere to be found because it doesn't exist because AI made it up. So, it has its pluses and pros and cons, minus the environmental, the things that we're concerned about with data centers. So while it can be absolutely positive, I also recognize that there can be a lot of negative associated with it as well.
I was just going to piggyback off of you real quick, Dr. Weaver, and just saying, yes, with the notes, it can be helpful. But as clinical professionals, I think in every single professional field, being mindful of us proofreading, because like AI can be hallucinating and make up things that it thought we said. And now you have a client or patient's chart incorrect or wrong. Now you have someone else's information in there. And when we get audits by insurance, because it has happened, insurance companies and things like that, they see it and they're like, "Hey, your clinician sat here and wrote this, and it's completely wrong." The also thing that makes me worry too is when you do have these up and going new clinicians coming in, and now this is all they know, and they don't actually know how to write clinical notes. It makes me feel good that I know how to write clinically before I started to use this, but it's definitely training, like Dr. Weaver said, being mindful, even with them using that, they still know how to use clinical jargon themselves and know how to write, a note for patients.
All right. Well, then let's see here. We have, in all of your professional opinions, what are some evidence based therapeutic approaches or treatment models that have proven most effective when working with patients who may have distrust of the healthcare system or prior negative experiences with therapy?
I think I will say I don't know that I use any one evidence-based treatment model to overcome that, because I don't know that I've had that as an issue someone came to therapy with. That may have been an issue that led them to me as a therapist. But for anyone who's experienced some sort of trauma, I am an EMDR trained clinician, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, which was headed by Dr. Francine Shapiro in order to address